Hi, Adrian Fry here from TrueFit Golf, and what I want to do is celebrate here Adam Scott's victory in the Masters by analysing his golf swing and looking what the amateur golfer can learn from this fantastic swing. If you had a fairy godmother and you wanted someone to give you a swing, well, this certainly would be one worth to consider. So first thing with Scott, he's got a great posture, very athletic young man, but a great posture, and a couple of points the amateur can learn from: that his hip sockets here are just nicely positioned over his ankle sockets, so he's got this kind of almost springiness, just athletic as we call it, almost like a goalkeeper or a tennis player waiting for a serve. So he's aligned his hip sockets over his ankles with a little bit of light knee flex. The other thing I'd ask you to consider is what his belt line is doing. If you look at the line of his belt on his trousers, is pointing down towards the golf ball here, so he's tilted, he's not got his bottom tucked under, so that gives him this straighter spine here, and then you'll just get some natural curvature with your shoulders at the top of the spine there. So it's a really super posture. Now if we draw a couple of plane lines on, now without getting into too much detail about plane, we've got the original angle the shaft is sat on, and then we've got what we call the turning shoulder plane, the angle because where your arms are located on your body and your sternum, and you swing the club with your arms. Really in a good swing, the swing wants to kind of orbit between these sort of this corridor, if we can call it. First thing to note in that takeaway for most amateurs is as he takes the club away, just look at his right pocket here and the logo on his pants. You'll see he synchronises that one piece takeaway with his arms with a subtle turning of his hips and shoulders. The chest and shoulders and that frame are doing most of the work, so there's no manipulation with his hands, and he's just what we'd class as shaving the plane there. He's just taking the club up the plane without any manipulation. Now his arms start to swing freely and separate a little bit from his body. By the time he gets to the top here, he's just hinging it what we'd call on plane, so his left wrist is nice and flat. And in kind of modern terms, you hear about one planes and two planes. He's a bit of a two-plane swinger. His arms here are swinging on a different plane than his shoulders are turning, but he's still connected. So from that posture, he's able to get into this great position where his left wrist is hinged nice and flat, and his right wrist is folded here and cocked back. So that's, again, no manipulation of the club face. He's not cupped it, he's not arched it, he's got it in a super position. Now from here he's got to work on timing that downswing, and what you'll notice is his body starts to unwind, his knees and thighs and trunk are starting to rotate back, a bit of shift and turn, the club's dropping back down the plane. Now it's going to shave the plane, but if you look at the swing halfway down here, notice how his right elbow and bicep are tucked on his side, his right wrist is still loaded back. Basically that means he's not hitting with his arms. His angles are being transported or carried by the turn or pivot of his body. The big mistake that most amateurs make at this point, they think they've done all the work once they get to the top and try and thrash it, but he's just storing that energy, those angles, carrying them along, and then ultimately centrifugal force and centripetal force is building, and it's going to fling that club out and fling the club head out into the golf ball, and you see the club face appears to be open here, but then squares up at impact, bingo, and then note how it turns over, so you can see the club face here is closing, but that's the natural release of his body unwinding and the forearms and wrists rotating, the club's being flung over. Physics wants it to do that if you've delivered it in this fashion where you've dragged your angles along, then let it go. So the club squares up, and now it freewheels back out on the opposite plane, and a lovely position here where his shoulders have orbited around his spine. On this angle, the club's seeking that opposite plane again, so there's no manipulation there. So it really is, the lines of this swing are very pure and releasing through. And a little point for the amateur golfer, note how he's not trying to keep his head down. His eyes, his chin, his chest are following the flight of that ball, because when you're swinging it at 115 or so miles an hour, you don't want your body to get stuck. The body is generating the power. You want to unload all that energy, freewheel it through the ball, and let your eyes and club follow it to that sort of textbook finish here. Again, this club's back on plane again there. So key points for the amateur. Number one, get your posture right. As a simple idea, feel that you're swinging that club up through that right shoulder. If you're swinging it up in that right shoulder area, you're not going to be far away. Then learn to drag your angles, store those levers, then let the club head go, and freewheel to a balanced finish. I think if you try a few of those things, I hope you'll see your driving and your accuracy improve with all your clubs.